so much. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout here on a Saturday. That's very exciting for us as we're traveling around the state today. We started out in Statesville, and we'll be going to Charlotte and down to Union County for a couple events tonight. So we're staying busy and out there on the campaign trail, and we appreciate your support very, very much. I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself. I actually started out at the Supreme Court with my legal career. I was clerking for Justice Burley Mitchell, and that was a real privilege to start there, and now I'm hoping to return to that court as a justice. And that's a very exciting opportunity for me, and I certainly ask for and hope to have your support on November 2nd. I left Justice Mitchell's office and went to Governor Martin's office and was there for a year at the end of his term. And when I left there, I went to an advocacy agency for persons with disabilities for about 4 years. I felt like I needed to balance that government experience out with some private practice experience. So I went with a small firm that does that does local government land use law for about 4 years. And I also continued to do disability law while I was there. After that, I joined Cherie Berry as her general counsel in 2001 and spent 4 years there before joining the Court of Appeals. And I know that the court system can be kind of confusing. And just to give you all a little bit of information, basically there are 4 types of judges that the state of North Carolina elects. District court judges, and of course Judge Amory Calabria was a district court judge before joining the Court of Appeals. They serve terms of 4 years. Superior Court judges who serve terms of 8 years, Court of Appeals judges, and Supreme Court justices, and those both serve terms of 8 years as well. And I'm 5.5 years into my first term on the Court of Appeals, and now seeking an 8-year term at the Supreme Court. At the Court of Appeals, we're an error-correcting court, and since you're going to hear from 2 more Court of Appeals judges, I'll let you hear a little bit more about our court from them. The Supreme Court is the court of final resort in North Carolina, and the only place you can go from our court is to the United States Supreme Court, and the only way you can get there is if there's also a federal constitutional issue. The Supreme Court is the final word on matters from the General Assembly, statutes, and matters of North Carolina constitutional law. So I sort of think of our state Supreme Court as the guardian of North Carolina's Constitution. It's a very important job, and it's a job which I will take very seriously if I'm so fortunate to be elected. It's a real privilege to have the opportunity to run for this very important office. One of the things I'd like to talk to you a little bit about as well is a Court of Appeals race that's coming up. And I think it's very important for you to be educated. The fact that you're here on a Saturday shows how interested you are and that you're the kind of folks that your friends and your neighbors and your relatives are going to come to for information. You've probably heard there are 4 Court of Appeals seats on the ballot this year, and there's a 5th that's come up in the month of August. One of our judges on the Court of Appeals recently went up to the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that created a vacancy in his office. Another judge has been appointed to that vacancy. Governor Perdue had the right to appoint to that, but because it was more than 60 days before the election, that judgeship will go on the ballot. Well, what happens with that now is we have an instant runoff vote. And I'm going to tell you what the Board of Elections sent out. And it's very confusing. And I say that as somebody who's been practicing law for 20 years, 5 of which have been on the Court of Appeals. First, voters may rank order up to 3 candidates. So instead of just picking one person, you're going to pick up to 3. And as of Friday at 5 p.m., there were 5 people who already had filed for this seat, not including the judge that's already sitting in this seat. And we know of a couple more that probably are going to file. Number 2, if one candidate receives sufficient first-choice votes to achieve the threshold of victory, the counting stops and that candidate wins. Now, the threshold of victory in a nonpartisan race is 50 or more percent. Right. So you have to get at least 50%. And think about that. With probably at least 6 candidates, that's going to be pretty difficult to achieve on the first ballot. If no candidate's votes achieve the threshold of victory, there's a second round of counting. That's the 3rd provision. The 4th provision, only the 2 candidates receiving the most and second most first choice votes advance to the second round of counting. If 2 or more candidates are tied for second place, the instant runoff voting method is used to determine which of those candidates advances to the second round. There's more. If there is an insufficient number of candidates to use instant runoff voting, or if 2 candidates remain tied after the use of instant runoff voting, then the tie is broken to the provisions of the statute. That's the end of the 4th provision. And the 5th and final provision is, in the second round of counting, each ballot is counted as a vote for whichever of the 2 remaining candidates is ranked higher on the ballot, If neither remaining candidate is ranked on the ballot is exhausted and not counted in the second round. That's it.
Everybody knows what she's
And I think, as you can see, it's going to be very confusing and challenging to become educated. I think that probably both political parties will be educating their voters as to how this works. Like I said, I've been practicing law 20 years. I think it's confusing. This method of voting has been used in North Carolina at the local level. It was used for a Cary City Council race. And interestingly, the fellow that wound up on the city council didn't have the highest number of votes in the first round of voting.